Hello YouTube! Thank you for tuning in to another Freebird Media live stream. Today is Wednesday, July 24th, 2019, and this is actually my second stream today. So, I was streaming earlier about an article that came out about a professor at Harvard University who teaches a course on decision making and how we got horribly catfished over the last 2 years, and it's a very interesting story. I recommend checking out that stream if you didn't hear about it. It's a bit shorter. But tonight, I want to talk about some funner stuff, some other stuff that I'm really into as a hobby in my spare time that I don't talk about that much, which is, pardon me, the work of Graham Hancock and some of his books and some of what I've been learning about in his latest book. So I'm just going to take a minute to tweet out a link to this, and I'll let a few more people join the discussion. Give me one moment here. Grab this. By the way, if you have Twitter, please follow Freebird Media Canada. I think it's FBM Canada, at FBM Canada. Feel free to follow us on Twitter. And just throwing out a hashtag here. America before. Let's throw that out there. Grab this. Slavy's here. Awesome. Slavey, good to see you, man. I was hoping you'd tune in. Got, okay, there's a couple people in the chat now. Let me just throw up this final link there to Facebook. Alright, cool. Slavey, I don't know if you're a fan of Graham Hancock's work or even familiar with it. For some reason, I feel like you probably would be. Because he's, he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a lot. And so a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with his work because Joe Rogan and him are buddies. And loosely related to the theme of this channel with free speech stuff, he had some controversy a few years ago, this guy Graham Hancock, over a TED Talk of his that got banned. It's called The War on Consciousness. Interesting. This guy's a bit of a hippie, New Ager guy. He claimed he's done a lot of ayahuasca down in Peru with shamans. He believes that, there's a spirit world and that these spirits communicate with him and so on. People can interpret this stuff however they want. That's his take on it. But this is a pretty interesting TED Talk. I believe what it really came down to was he got his TED Talk and this other guy Rupert Sheldrake had their TED Talks pulled for being pseudoscientific. But I think what they were really in some way they'd crossed the pharmaceutical industry or some lobby group. There's some interest in the pharmaceutical thing, I think, was the end of that story, but which is why TED was sort of going against him. But the other guy too, by the way, is Rupert Sheldrake. He had a really good talk. And I just want to hype one of his books too. This is one of my favorites I have on my shelf actually. Rupert Sheldrake, Science Set Free: 10 Paths to New Discovery. Now Sheldrake's the guy that's kind of people think he's a quack because he came up with that morphic resonance theory, which I don't know, may or may not be something to it. And he's associated with a lot of New Age kind of stuff, but he's not really a New Ager. And I hate the New Age movement. But this book was really good because I'm very Western minded. I like to consider myself very rational, and the scientific method is very important to me, the stuff. And so in the West, we kind of have the fundamental materialists in the West kind of think that materialist science answers everything. But this was fun for me as a writer because he writes it in a Q&A form. And he talks about sort of how science has its own dogmas, and he questions them right down to the speed of light, for example. And he goes to the microscopy department in London and looks at all these variations in the measurements of the speed of light and postulates why that could be. Fun book because every chapter just ends with a list of 10 questions to ask yourself, a lot like the Robert Anton Wilson books I like. So if you like science and especially like science fiction, or you're a writer and you want to learn ways to look at new paradigms, you could look at stuff. This is a pretty good book for that. So yeah, really like this book, Science Set Free, Rupert Sheldrake. I give it 2 thumbs up. Just good for opening your mind to stuff. Anyway. The other guy, like I said, I love. I first heard about this guy, Graham Hancock, when I was 16, so about 17 years ago, I think, 17, 18 years ago now. I was on a camping trip in Algonquin Park with my dad and some cousins and some uncles and a friend, I think. And one night, everyone had gone to sleep except me and one of my uncles, and he was telling me about this Graham Hancock, the pyramids. in Egypt and the Sphinx, and how the Sphinx, the erosion on the Sphinx is vertical instead of horizontal, and how some people believed that the Sphinx was way older than the conventional Egyptologists claim, and it was mostly just a fun thing to think about. And I've always been really into Indiana Jones, since I was a little kid. I know it's really cliche, but like I am super white, 33-year-old dude, so that's my thing. I love Indiana Jones, so I always kept an open mind to that stuff. And I don't really believe in many conspiracies in terms of I don't think the world is flat. I don't really believe aliens are interacting with us that much in any way that we could know. I'm not into the alien. I don't think aliens built the pyramids. I don't think. I'm not into any kind of magic stuff or aliens or what's the other one, the flat Earth crap or anything like that. And most of that I like to study more from like in a psychology lens and see why their minds get fixated on these weird conspiracies. But this meta theory that Graham Hancock has is something that hasn't been disproven or proven. So it's just as an agnostic guy, it's fun to play with. He presents a lot of good arguments that start to make me think that maybe there is something to this. On the other hand, I keep my foot in reality too, and a lot of the mainstream versions of history are just as interesting. But I feel like in some ways he's already been vindicated since then. So, got to meet Graham Hancock when he was doing his book tour for Magicians of the Gods about 5 years ago, and it was cool to chat with him over on Bloor Street. And that's a picture of he and I chatting. Very cool guy. There's one picture of I told him, I think I was in journalism school at the time. Actually, I told him he was one of my inspirations for wanting to go back and be a journalist. Hancock was a mainstream journalist before he started writing about these fringe topics. And one thing you got to keep in mind when you think about guys like Rupert Sheldrake or Graham Hancock is when you look at their ideas as a whole, don't ask yourself, is this true or false, but how much of this is true or false, and how many they postulate or hypothesize a lot of ideas. They're not going to be right about everything. It's just, but that doesn't mean that everything's wrong. And to the degree of which they're just trying to sell books and make money by selling lies, I don't really, I think Sheldrake is just an honest guy, and I think Hancock, I think he's a bit of a hippie, and I think he knows what will sell, but I don't think he's a fraud. People accuse him of voluntarily exaggerating things, and maybe he is trying to read into a lot of things, but it's just still fun to think about. And then I'm going to get into his whole arguments. I'm going to do like a series of streams about this, because this one's going to be just mostly about the opening of his new book, because there's so much to say. But I like Graham Hancock. I'd be curious how many viewers of mine or followers of Freebird are into Graham Hancock's ideas. Sleepy says the moon is flat. That's for sure. I don't know about that, but I don't think. Here's my interpretation of the moon. The moon is not there when nobody's. There is no moon when no one's looking at it. That's my opinion of the moon. Figure that out. So, like I was saying though, I have a few more pictures here. Hold on a sec. Yeah, there's he and I. Very nice guy. Signed a lot of my books. He's a very nice guy to talk to. Very personable. Like him a lot. Also, I've got so he's a fiction writer too. I got this copy of his book War God, Knights of the Witch, and he signed it for me too. Very, very nice guy. His fiction's not bad, and I really like the themes. This was a novel of the epic quest of the Mexican conquest, the conquest of Mexico by the Spanish. That's what this is basically about. And Graham, it's about how the Aztecs are slaughtering everyone, and their leader is doing psilocybin mushrooms and communicating with this war god that's telling him to sacrifice all these people. And there's Cortez and his army, and they're coming to wipe everyone out. And there's people caught in the middle, and some of the shamans have, I think Hancock's a believer that some of these Aboriginal shamans have like psychic powers, and psychedelics are like gateways to the spirit world and stuff. Not a bad book. Anyway, he gets mocked a lot. He's a fringe writer, but I think his work matches up with a lot of other people really well. This was cool. When Fingerprints of the Gods was first published in '95, archaeologists in their fields and the media, including New Scientist magazine, condemned the book as pseudoscience and claimed its message was preposterous. The central message of Fingerprints of the Gods: civilization is older and more mysterious than we thought. 18 years on, in New Scientist magazine, the true dawn: civilization is older and more mysterious than we thought. And this was when Göbekli Tepe was discovered. So, Grant Hancock's basic fun hypothesis theory, starting with Fingerprints of the Gods, is that there must have been an advanced civilization that existed more than 10,000 years ago. And he thinks the pyramids and the Sphinx are at least 12,500 years old, and because of the way they match up with the solstice at the time period and a bunch of other stuff. Some really fun arguments in this book. Like, for example, it starts off with there's some various maps around the world. I think there's at least 5 of them, including the Peri-Reis map, and that are in museums in Turkey and around the world. There's another one. Yeah, there's a Peri-Reis map, and there's the Orontes Phineas map, and there's a bunch of these maps that appear to have Antarctica on them. And they were made more than 400 years ago, before Antarctica was officially discovered. So Graham thinks that these map makers were basing their maps on much, much older maps that had been in museums throughout the millennia that have now been destroyed, and that some ancient people knew about Antarctica because they were seafaring people that moved around the globe and had mapped the whole globe out. That's his meta-thesis. And so he just digs up all these little things to kind of put together a loose argument for his thing. It's fun. It's all meant to be. At this point, I'm still keeping it tongue-in-cheek as I'm reading this stuff, right? But it starts to get fun and very compelling, right? And he talks about the Nazca lines down in Peru, these maps, the dating of the Sphinx, and these pyramids, and stuff like that. And it starts to paint this picture that there was this, there must have been people more than 10,000 years ago, or before the last ice age, that had all this advanced mathematics and abilities, and that their legacy of their knowledge is what informed Egypt and the South Americans and so on, and that's why there's pyramids on both continents, and et cetera, et cetera. Fun, but then the next book was a bit. This came out like 5 years ago. Magicians of the Gods, also super fun, and this focused a lot on Göbekli Tepe, because Göbekli Tepe is this site in modern day Turkey that they've discovered now, and they figure that it was intentionally buried at least 10,000 years ago, and it's very huge. It's much, much bigger than Stonehenge, and has a lot of complex animal carvings, and it appears to be some sort of temple. And the only way this fits into the real mainstream narrative is that this was before agriculture, basically, that this was created, and this is why it did. Even the mainstream narrative had to change with the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, because it implies that basically nomadic hunter-gatherers were still building large, complex sites like Göbekli Tepe, and that's why it gets controversial. And I've heard Graham Hancock talk at length on podcasts about like the actual authorities and the local governments and the actual controversy going on with this, who the mainstream scientists are and what their position is and why they're doing this and that. And honestly, it's really interesting stuff to think about. Some stuff I know, mainstream stuff. The oldest official skeleton found the oldest unknown, like on record right now, American person in the Americas that they found is a skull of a 14-year-old girl in an underwater cave in Mexico. It was a cave that was above water at one point, and then since the ice age ended, all these caves have been flooded. So these divers went down off the coast of Mexico into these huge cavernous. There's like so many underwater caves in Mexico, and they found this skull way down there, preserved with all these other huge extinct mammals now. And it's 14,000 years old. 14,000 is the oldest known American. So the official story is that not long before that, maybe 15,000, and they've done DNA traces with her and some of these other known groups of Aboriginal. And they found out that basically all the North American Indians are related genetically, and they're all the descendants of this one group that came through in over the land bridge. And so the official story is that the oldest we think that the Americas were the last place to be populated by man, probably very recently in the big picture, like 15 to 20,000 years ago. But Graham's whole thing is that, going back maybe 30, 40,000 years ago, or maybe even the tens and tens of thousands of millennia, that there's like an ancient prehistory of people that had, and he thinks, I think he thinks their technology was like shamanic based or based on entheogens and stuff like that. That's where it gets kind of mystical and weird and all this stuff, but makes lots of compelling arguments. So anyway, been rambling a lot here. I'll just sort of an intro to the thing. Like I said, I'd have to do so many streams on all this stuff. The Magician's Gods talks about. He thinks the magicians are these people that they seem to be depicted in all these different civilizations, and they're these men that have beards and they carry these bags around, and no one knows what these bags are, and all these different depictions. And he thinks these were the people that were traveling around trying to seed this different types of knowledge and spirituality and mathematics to these different indigenous groups of people, basically. But anyway, I got kind of excited for the newest book. I got this as a gift for my birthday last week. This is America Before, The Key to Earth's Lost Civilization. Like I said, I don't necessarily believe that in all of this, but it's fun and it's not disproven yet. And he's doing a really good job of building stuff together to the point where I got to start to think about what the hell is actually going on here. So I'd never heard about this place called, or this thing that's not, like I grew up in southern Ontario, and not far from me at all, geographically in Ohio, just across the border, is this thing called the Serpent Mound, which is really cool, and I never heard about it until the new book came out. So there's Lake Erie on the map, and you can see above going. So I grew up down on Lake Erie, but you can see Toronto at the top there. So not far from, you're just going a bit south of Toronto. There's the border on the other side of Lake Erie, the States there, and right across is Ohio. And then you go down where it says Free Media Live. The word "live" right above it there is where this Serpent Mound historical site is. And I really want to go check it out now. I want to go there at some point this summer, now or this fall or something, and do my own Indiana Jones kind of thing and check this place out. Anyway, this thing that they have there is called the Serpent Mound. This is an aerial view of this 1,500 meter long Serpent Mound that is carved on the edge of this crater that was caused by an asteroid impact or a comet impact, probably 300 million years ago. So right there in Ohio, like, the scientists estimate probably approximately 300 million years ago, an asteroid or an extraterrestrial object slammed into the Earth and made this impact crater that's mostly eroded now, but still basically there. And on the edge of this crater is this 1,500 meter long snake, and it's really, really interesting there. You can see the tail at the end, and then it wiggles along here, and then at the end it's got its mouth open, and there's an egg coming out of it, and it's really, really quite fascinating to me. There's a side image of it there, so you can kind of see how it's on the edge of this crater, and you can see how it wiggles up there, and then the mouth opens up, and there's the egg right there on the edge, and you see how the edge comes to a point like that. So here's the kicker, though. If you're standing at the edge of the snake's mouth on the solstice, December 20th or 21st, they used a drone, Hancock and his wife, to check this out, but the sun rises through this peak and these trees the snake's looking directly at, and you see this crazy effect with the solstice and the sun and how it rises. And I think the snake might even be pointing, like true north. I have to check again what it says in the book. But the point is, it's clearly intentional, and the snake is, it's this large snake that's like pointed directly at the rising sun on the solstice. And the reason that that's significant, I guess, in the bigger picture is that this is part of a pattern that we see that Graham and a lot of the other people identified called astro architecture. So it turns out that a lot of these mythic sites around the world, like the Sphinx in Giza, these temples in Cambodia at Angkor Wat. Pretty sure that Stonehenge ties into this somehow, or some of the examples. So a whole bunch of these famous, ancient sites around the world. They're all basically built around the same concept of using the summer solstice as a measurement, and it's not a coincidence. So there's this astro architecture is these all qualify as basically astro architecture that are built around the sun and the solstice and natural geography, and some of it's pretty crazy. So yeah, there's one of these Serpent Mounds in Canada, here in Ontario too, not far from Toronto, closer than this one, like an hour away. I'm going to check that one out too, but it's smaller and it's on a reservation here, a native reservation here in Ontario. But this one's bigger, and I just think it's fascinating. I mean, like, think about this being made from. Again, here's a bird's eye view of this thing. It's 1,500 meters long on the edge of this impact crater, and it's this long snake in the ground with this egg coming out of its mouth on this edge where it points true north or at the sun. I gotta read the book. Quote the book in a second. On the solstice. So, kind of super impressive when you look at it from the sky. And it's interesting to see how the official story about what this thing is changes. So, there's a sign. Give me a moment. Sorry. So, this is the sign now. I can't remember if this one's out of the current one or not, because the official story has actually changed. So here we see this. This was the official marker, and it said, one of North America's most spectacular effigy mounds. Serpent Mound is a gigantic earthen sculpture representative of a snake, built on a spur of rock overlooking Ohio Bush Creek around 1000 A.D. by the Fort Ancient culture. The earthwork was likely a place of ceremonies dedicated to a powerful serpent spirit. The site is located on the edge of a massive crater, possibly formed by the impact of a small asteroid around 300 million years ago. Frederick Ward Putnam studied Serpent Mound between, I think it's 1886 and 1889. Due largely to his efforts, Serpent Mound became the first privately funded archaeological preserve in the United States. So here it attributes the creation of this to the upper, where does it say there? The Fort Ancient culture, about 1,000 years ago. But this has been changed now. And what I like about Graham's books are that you kind of get, you can go to the Wikipedia pages, and you can go and look at these official markers and stuff like that, and you'll see that kind of stuff. But when you read Graham's book, he'll give you, like, he goes and he speaks to these people that run these parks and work there, and the archaeologists and the academics who work on it. So he talks directly, and he gets the story behind what's going on with these academics behind the scenes and how they make these decisions. And you see a lot of this stuff is guesswork and arbitrary, and then people get really defensive once they put their theory out there and they don't want it to change. And I don't mean that a lot. You hear that kind of that generalization all the time, but he gives you details of that in these books, which is what I like. So now there's a different sign there, because now the official story is that it's 2,000 years old, not 1,000 years old. So it's doubled in age already. Graham, of course, thinks it might be much, much older than that, but now it looks like an earlier group of people probably built it around 2,000 years ago, and these other group of people did a restoration project on it about 1,000 years ago. So you got to remember, if a lot of these ancient sites are truly ancient, then they've probably been updated multiple times over the eons. So I'll get you some interesting details here in a sec here. By the way, everyone, I am drinking delicious coffee from this Freebird Media coffee mug. Feel free to support the channel, purchase one of these kick-ass mugs. Pretty soon I'm gonna, I'm working towards getting enough money to upgrade my setup significantly, so I have a, real mic, a real audio setup, better lighting, all that shit. By the end of the summer, I'm gonna have a significant upgrade on this channel. But so thanks for sticking with me in the meantime, and if you want to support the channel, consider Patreon or grab one of these mugs. Anyway, that's my pitch. Back to, as for the Serpent Mound, I want to see here. I'll read part of. I'm just going to read from this book for a second. Throw some images up here. Please listen along. North American archaeology has a long track record of wanting North American sites to be young, as we'll see in Part 2. In the case of Serpent Mound, however, there were some archaeologists, notable among them William Romaine, who were never happy with the somewhat tenuous nature of the evidence of which Fletcher, Pickard, and Leopard had built their castle in the sky. As Romain tactfully put it in 2011, since the charcoal that was dated did not come from the Foundation feature or event, the AD 1070 date may not reflect when the effigy was actually constructed. Soon afterward, Romain followed up his hunch by joining forces with a multidisciplinary team of fellow researchers. To reevaluate when and how Serpent Mound was built, it was a thorough professional long-term project deploying the latest technologies and involving fresh excavations, core sampling, and multiple radiocarbon dates. The results, published in the Journal of Archaeological Science in October 2014, thoroughly ripped the rug out from under the comfortable consensus of the previous 18 years that the Serpent Mound was around 900 to 1,000 years old and was the work of the Fort Ancient culture. We believe that, taken as a whole, Romain and his colleagues reported, our data strongly support that the Serpent Mound was first constructed 2,300 years ago rather than 1,400 years ago. Our results indicate the presence of a pre-construction Paleosol beneath the Serpent Mound, and that charcoal from different locales along its surface dates consistently to 300 BC. The youngest calibrated age within the 95% probability range is 116 BC, and we obtained no dates associated with the later Fort Ancient occupation of the site. Charitably, however, there was no crowning in triumph, no pouring of scorn on Fletcher, Leopard, and Pickard. Instead, Romain's team saw the real answer in the compromise. Quote, the evidence compiled by Fletcher et al. Concerning the reliability of their C-14 ages is generally convincing and supports the charcoal as authentically related to a Fort Ancient reconstruction episode 900 years ago, which leaves the contradiction between the two initial construction chronologies unresolved. To settle this contradiction, we propose that Serpent Mound was constructed and then later modified during two distinct episodes: an Adena construction 2,300 years ago, during which the mound was first built, followed 1,400 years ago later by an episode of Fort Ancient renovation or repair. Because their work was well done, their evidence solid, and their arguments compelling, but also because their redating was more of a return to their pre-1996 consensus than anything dangerously new or radical, the model proposed by Roman and his colleagues had subsequently displaced Fletcher et al. Serpent Mound has been returned to the Adena, and despite some unpersuasive protests from Bradley Leopard and incomplete information foisted on the public at the site itself, few today would seriously attempt to argue that it is less than 2,300 years old. The lingering question, though, is, could it be older? Perhaps very much older? After all, is it not the defining quality of the serpent from time to time that it sheds its skin? And is it not precisely on account of this that it served for many ancient cultures as a symbol of reincarnation? Is it therefore reasonable to ask how Serpent Mound has shed its skin and renewed itself? The 1996 and the 2004 studies taken together provide solid evidence of a change of skin around 900 years ago, a renovation project. However, largely because of the pre-construction Paleosol, soil stratum laid down in an earlier age, forming the foundation of the mold, it is taken for granted that the earlier episode of 2,300 years ago was the birth of the project. Setting aside one anomalous charcoal fragment dated to 2920 years ago in the 1996 study, and the two fragments testifying to the Fort Ancient renovation, all the datable materials from the 2014 study, which clustered around 300 BC as we've seen, were found above this bed of ancient soil. The sub-mound Paleosol was buried. The archaeologists therefore conclude, and Serpent Mound construction began 2,300 years ago during the early Wellwood Adena period. It seems like a reasonable argument that it leaves another possibility unconsidered, namely that 2,300 years ago Serpent Mound was already an enormously ancient structure, perhaps very much eroded and damaged, and that it was clearly down to the level of the Paleosol and remade by the Adena culture at this time. In that case, the archaeologists behind the 2014 study would not have documented the birth of the serpent, but its rebirth, or reincarnation. Why not? The 2014 study did not gather the necessary data to confirm whether the mound was in continuous use from the Adena period 2,300 years ago until the Fort Ancient renovations 1,400 years ago. However, a possible erased coil near the head of the serpent indicates that other alterations, potentially several hundred years earlier than the Fort Ancient repairs, may also have occurred. This suggests a deeper, richer, and far more complex history for Serpent Mound than previously known. Again, why should this deeper, richer, far more complex history be limited to the relatively recent past? Since Romain and his colleagues are prepared to consider the possibility that Serpent Mound was regularly used, repaired, and possibly reconfigured by local groups for more than 2,000 years, then why not for longer? Even Fletcher and co. admit that their anomalous 20-year-old piece of charcoal and nearby Adena burial mounds are evidence of the use of the area during the early woodland period. But why should such use have been ephemeral, as they assert? Why shouldn't those early woodland people also, like later cultures, have been present to tend to, maintain, restore, and sometimes reorient and reconstruct the Great Manitou? If so, and if others who came before them had done the same work in their time, inheriting that sacred responsibility from even earlier cultures and participating down the millennia in an irregular process of restoration and refurbishment, then the possibility cannot be ruled out that the first incarnation of the effigy might indeed have been in the Ice Age 13,000 years ago. Were that to be confirmed, everything we've been taught about the state of nearly Native American civilization and the global timeline of prehistory would have to be rethought. So I think that's pretty cool. I would also like to point out that Graham is, saying this could be 13,000 years old, and I know that the official story now is that we have a skull of a woman who was 14,000 years ago that they found in South America, and this is up farther north in Ohio. So I don't even think it would really necessarily change the story all that much. This is all fun to play with. A lot of people probably have noticed I have that Conan the Barbarian poster on the wall. I love Conan. I love the books and the movie and the comics and all that. Conan was awesome. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Conan, but the movies always start off with that little intro from the comics where it's like, before the days when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Azeroth, there was an age undreamed of. And I think it'd be awesome if there is actually this time period before or during the last ice age that basically got wiped out, because even Plato, according to the Graham Hancock books in his work from Greece, talked about there being like an Atlantean civilization, and the thing with the timeline and the Graham Hancock's work kind of coming together with Randall Carlson's stuff suggests that there might have been a cataclysmic event about 13,000 years ago that took out the off eastern Canada. This works out with the timeline and the geography of where Plato was talking about. That's why it's so interesting. It's a lot of this could all be based on basically warning about the fact that the Earth gets hit by comets way more than we actually realize in a big picture sense, way more frequently. And that's probably why there's all these archetypal myths about the flood, in Christianity and Noah's Ark, but all cultures have flood stories, and that's probably because we do actually remember the last cataclysmic event that might have taken out an advanced civilization that people kind of today call Atlantis, but these people that had just more advanced mathematics and astrology and stuff. And I think they were traveling around the globe and seeding information to other local groups of people, trying to get them doing whatever or working with them. Who knows? It's all fun to speculate on, but that's basically what I wanted to share, because I want to do more streams on this kind of stuff. But I just want to introduce viewers to Hancock, if you don't know his work already, and talk about Serpent Mound, because I hadn't heard about it until I got this book. So awesome. Howard G, Gun Cotton, great to see you guys in the chat. Always glad you guys are joining us. AKA Miss K says, Hancock is a great stepping stone, easy to share with boomers and colleagues. And I think you are right. He isn't a fraud, but he really understands his brand and audience. Yeah, basically. He knows how to have fun with what he's doing, but he also, he has put together, he's put together a pretty cool idea that isn't, out of the question. There's this used bookstore here in Toronto that I really like to go to, and they have a hardcover old copy of The Sign and the Seal that I want to get, which I suspect is probably, I haven't read it, it's one of his earlier books, it's kind of popular. I'd like to read it, even if it's nonsense, I want to read it anyway. And he postulates that, I believe that the idea is that he believes in the Ark of the Covenant, and that it was moved out of Egypt at some point and taken to Ethiopia, where this ancient group of, this ancient Jewish sect of Ethiopians still protect this lost technology. And Really sounds like some fun Indiana Jones kind of stuff. But I want to get that book and just have it because it's like a cool hardcover antique copy or a vintage copy of it. Um, like I said, like this alternative archaeology is just really fun to read up on. Gun Cotton says, in the south tip of South America, the first DNA was the same as Australian Aboriginals. So that actually is something he talks about in America before, but I haven't got that far in the book yet. It says, on the back of the book here, it says, certain tribes of the Amazon jungle are closely related to Australian Aborigines. How did this extraordinary, unexpected, and extremely ancient DNA signal get to the Amazon? I am curious to see what this book is going to say on that. And then he also, it also said the remains of hundreds of gigantic geometrical earthworks have recently been found in the Amazon jungle. They have unexplained resemblances to the equally grand and mysterious earthworks of Ohio, such as Serpent Mound and the Newark and High Bank works, and to other geometrical and astronomical monuments as far afield as Stonehenge in England and Angkor in Cambodia. A global cataclysm occurred near the end of the Ice Age around 12,800 years ago. A disintegrating comet crossed the orbit of the Earth and bombarded our planet with a swarm of fragments, some up to a mile in diameter. The epicenter of the cataclysm lay in North America, and immense floods were unleashed as large sectors of the ice cap were melted by the shock and the heat of the impacts. In the turmoil and advanced civilization, hitherto the stuff of myth and legend was lost to history, until now. So, super fun idea, and there is whether or not he's right in his meta theory, it doesn't matter. He's definitely just found some seriously weird mysteries. The Nazca lines in Peru, these artworks on the ground that you have to be really high up to see from a bird's eye view are pretty mind-boggling. I don't know how this stuff was ever created or conceived, especially by hunter-gatherers. I think it's easy to think about the psychology of this because this stuff exists and it's just sitting there in plain sight, so it doesn't mesmerize anybody. But if you sit there and you think about it too long and really appreciate the weirdness and what you're actually looking at, it starts to blow your mind a little bit. The scale, the way, I think people, because the pyramids, for example, at Giza, the big ones in Egypt, are just sitting there. People just assume, well, they were, slaves must have built them. They're there. But to actually go further and to start analyzing them even deeper, I don't know, man. I don't know how those things were built by slaves. I don't think aliens built them. I don't know how those ancient people built them because people don't appreciate how impressive that really is. But I think he is correct though. And I'm just looking at a lot of these cool pictures. The books are filled with cool pictures from South America, North America. So, but there's just so many sites all over this planet that are all based around the same astrology, and man, Egypt is friggin' cool. I think sometimes I like to just sit and trip out at how old and weird this shit is, and just sitting there that humans make, man. It's really impressive. What's going on in Egypt, man? How smart were I wish I knew what the average intelligence was like of people living in ancient Egypt. Whenever these hieroglyphs were made in these pictures with Anubis and all that, I really wish I understood these people. It's mind-boggling. Like I said, I like Graham Hancock because he's like the real-life Indiana Jones, and I like Indiana Jonesy stuff. And I wanted to mention this other cool book that I read a while ago. So there was I picked up this book in chapters by Adam Schultz called Alone Against the North, and on the back it said, "This is Canada's Indiana Jones." So I bought it right away, and I don't have it here. It's in my other room, but when I go home next week, I'm going to get it and talk about this because this was a really fascinating book. It's a nonfiction book. This is Canadian explorer, and this was I think in 2008 maybe. It turns out you can actually go to parts of northern Canada that have been sort of... This might have changed because this was 10 years ago. Now we have all this new technology. But at the time, there were still parts of Canada that were technically unexplored and that no human being might have ever actually walked over before, which is pretty badass when you think about it. There are parts far up north in Canada where not even the Aboriginals that were here before might have actually ever crossed. So he wanted to go up there and he worked with the Canadian Geological Society, and he wanted to name a lake after him. Like there are lakes that have been sort of identified vaguely, but he wanted to actually be the first guy to go up and like touch and be in some of these lakes and name one. It's pretty cool. I like that kind of exploring, and talks about like the elements. It's a non-fiction book though. Like it's definitely a cool adventure, but it's like, you know, a lot of shitty, like dealing with one of the shittiest parts is dealing with black flies and the bugs when you get up there. A couple of times, yeah, he saw polar bears that he thought might have been a serious threat that would have scared the shit out of him. But he has some cool, you know, I love the outdoors. I love camping. I didn't grow up in the city, so I'm kind of like, I grew up in the Scouts and doing a lot of outdoors camping. So I don't know, reading this Graham Hancock stuff and just watching Indiana Jones movies, I have this itch to want to go out, like be out in the outdoors exploring. I gotta try to figure out something I can do with like journalism around for this channel. But yeah, I wanted to kind of hype Alone Against the North. Fun, interesting book. If you want to read like a true Canadian modern explorer story, yeah, check out Adam Schultz. Just checking the comments again. Mordecai says, "Read the Bible. It's the history of the planet." I assume you're talking about the floods and stuff. Probably. That's why That's why I think there's some credibility to these myths. They all, obviously all these cultures that have a flood story for a reason. Oops, where's my copy? Sorry guys, hold on a second. Mordecai says, men were never cavemen. They were created in the image of God, completely mature. They named the animals and plants, etc. as presented. They always had excellent vocabulary and quantum skills. Hey, you know what, guys? I want to share this fun. I like to do, I'm just an agnostic person with a huge range of, like, ways of looking at things. And I have no idea, like, human biology is fascinating. It's extremely complex. And I usually consider myself a science-based, rational person. I'm not religious. So I don't really believe in intelligent design. I believe in, I believe in for sure there's a process of evolution that happens that we can observe. What set that in motion, I don't know. The evolution of humans is interesting, but here's the thing. I'm going to share this with you for fun, because sometimes you look at the weirdness of human beings, and you got to wonder about intelligent design, because there's this fun TED Talk here about the aquatic ape theory, and this one woman just talks about these weird anomalies about the human body that don't really make sense, even in the evolutionary sense. Like, we have all these features of an aquatic animal, even though we're not an aquatic animal. For example, we're the only primate, or I believe we might even be the only mammal that can consciously control our breath. But there's more to it than that, and I haven't watched this in years. This is just for fun, but it's fascinating. Let me just share this talk with you. Aquatic ape theory. This woman, I like to explore weird fringe stuff and go hunting for interesting shit. This is a 17-minute TED Talk, and it's just fascinating. It just kind of shows you the weirdness of what's up with humans, and it makes me feel like the human body really is this like intelligently designed thing that has it just seems like I feel like I have a soul, and I'm driving around this vehicle that's like a kick-ass machine that's so intelligent it blows my mind. Mordecai says, a massive flood took place 30,000 feet deep to cover Mount Everest. But those ice caps came from the flood. They could not have happened without such a flood under extreme cold temps. I'm not forcing my thought, just saying. Well, I don't think that geologists, I don't think that you have to, there's always been huge amounts of water in the form of ice on this planet. If you believed God caused a flood, all God would have to do is send a comet to hit the Earth, and that impact would, heat things up so much that a lot of that ice would melt, or he can do it through whatever, just melt the ice, which is what happened, which is why so much of what wasn't underwater before is now underwater, and why so much of what is on land right now before was under ice too. So I think that there was I think it's almost proven with geology too. Randall Carlson's done some work that there was a cataclysmic event, and I think that's a part of the whole story. So, man, I'm an agnostic guy, but my probability meter favors this idea that Hancock puts out, that there was something going on at least 12,000 years ago. And I think the pyramids and the Sphinx are old. Like I think there's monuments made to mark time, and because of their timelessness, they're the message to future generations about stuff that could be erased because of cataclysmic events. And so that's what I think the pyramids really are. They might have had they might be some form of lost technology, but really I think more than anything, they're a way to communicate math and certain things to future generations in a timeless way. Because those pyramids they feel timeless, and they'll be there for so long. Um, but they've also eroded a lot too. So I mean, hopefully humans don't destroy them because they're pretty magical. Not a whole lot more going on in the chat though. Don't know what else I can say on the topic for tonight. I'm gonna do more streams related to this kind of stuff. What does he get into after? I'll keep reading these books, and the next one I'll probably do one on the Göbekli Tepe, and also the arguments for why the Sphinx and the pyramids are older than the conventional Egyptologists say. Also, I just have a hard time taking the mainstream story serious when it comes to the ones at Giza too, because they're always claiming that they're like big tributes to pharaohs as tombs, but that doesn't like they don't. There's nothing about them that makes me think that they're tombs, and they never found anyone inside or anything. So that explanation just kind of seems flimsy to me. Yeah. So Slavey says you should read Larkin Rose and anything by Tom Woods after Michael Malice. All right, I definitely will actually. Thanks for bringing that up too. Hold on, where is? Yeah, I've been reading more. For those of you, if you didn't catch the stream yesterday, I've been reading The New Right by Michael Malice. Very interesting. Motivating me to get my shit together so I can finish the book I've been writing on, because it's similar in some ways. So another shout out to this. Good breakdown of some of the stuff going on in The New Right and what the New Right is about. And I got a notepad here. Hold on. So I'm just going to write down Tom Woods and Lauren Larkin to look into it. Larkin Rose, Greatest Superstition. I will add that. It's on the list now. So I got to get through The New Right. I got to finish America Before by Graham Hancock, and I also am also reading a fictional book, and I've been meaning to finish this for so long. I keep getting wrapped up in these other books for free, but one of the guys I do boxing with turned me on to this Japanese fiction writer called Murakami. So let's see, I'm trying to get the light working here. Haruki Murakami, and he's a Japanese, amazing Japanese fiction writer, very popular, but I'd never heard of him until my friend showed me. And I read too much politics. Like the majority of what I read is political stuff. So you got to keep it fresh and tune out a bit and just read some fiction for fun. So I'm gonna finish this soon and then do, because it's amazing. He's a great writer. So I got to do a stream too on Murakami's work when it comes to fiction. So I got to finish that. I got to finish The New Right by Michael Malice. I'll talk about it a bit more when I'm finished it, hopefully within the next few days. Got to finish this Graham Hancock book on America Before, and then I can get to some of these other books here, and definitely look forward to looking into Larkin Rose. And if anyone else has any book suggestions, feel free to throw them up. Savvy says he wrote in prison. Probably got some interesting insights for sure. Then Sheldon says, enjoying the conversation, man, but my dogs are doing the pee-pee dance. I'll try to check in before chat ends. All right, appreciate that. Appreciate you guys watching it. Huge love for you guys for participating in these chats. I'm going to try to stream a lot more and try to get more interesting topics going that are non-controversial, because my channel, I've really invested in being basically a new media journalist. I've got all this debt from all the stuff I've set up, but I am, I'm a trained journalist. I have this Freebird channel, so I want to start making some money and dig myself out of my position currently. So I'm going to start streaming probably daily. Hopefully by the end of the summer I have a much more professional setup going on. But please feel free to throw out all kinds of topics that you want me to talk about, because if I can get the momentum going in with Freebird, get the viewers up again, and get the production values up so I can get more numbers in, I am actually, I can make money off these streams. The one, like, all the right-wing stuff I talk about gets demonetized right away, but this one, for example, I think should be fine when I'm done, and there'll only be 100 or a couple hundred views maybe. That's not really enough to make money, but if I can consistently daily do more streams on interesting stuff and it's not getting demonetized, like archaeology's pretty fun, right? I don't see why that should get shut down. Then I can start to spend more hours in the day preparing for streams, get the quality, get more images, get more research done, but also then we can have spicy chats whenever something comes up important related to free speech or like whatever, and those chats can get demonetized. It won't matter because I'll have other stuff going on, like these chats or whatever. So I just want, now that I have this whole channel up and running, let's talk about fun shit, guys. So like whatever you want, whatever topics you're into, just leave feedback, and I'll try to get appreciate. Sheldon sends $2. He says, "Awesome job, man. Super appreciate that. All super chats greatly appreciated." So yeah, thanks, Sheldon. Greatly appreciate that. Like I said, trying to get the production values up, and I did my research, so I know what I'm getting in terms of. I need a Focusrite Scarlett 2G interface, audio interface, and get my Pro Tools going on, and get my the lights that I need. So the audio is going to be way better, the lights going to be way better by the end of the summer. And then hopefully, maybe even later tonight, I'm supposed to be getting my Adobe software back so that I can start doing editing, and I can make this more than just me long-windedly talking, but I can do talking, then I can do pre-edited clips, because I have good technology too. Like I own good DSLR camera and all this other stuff. I need to be going around the city recording more actual stuff and then getting it edited in time to hit these streams by the evening. But this is all slow process that's coming, but just telling you guys what's up with that. So that is my plan over the next couple of months. Really try to get some more energy going on this channel. Anything else I wanted to talk about? I'm going to go for an hour, so I got 8 minutes more of chatting left. If anybody wants to talk, just make comments. Otherwise, I'm just going to find stuff to throw out to people watching. Oh man, what did... let's see what's on YouTube. What did I share on Freebird today? Oh yeah, Norfolk County. Back home in Norfolk County, where I'm from, I saw the Yellow Vest Exposed Twitter account, which is going all day long. We shared this out. Haldeman Norfolk Pro-Choice Twitter account said, "Come join us on August 3rd in Simcoe, Ontario. It's not far from where I grew up. LRMA Festival needs to support human rights. An anti-abortion homophobic group does not belong at a music festival." I thought this was fascinating because basically progressive victimhood politics has finally come to Norfolk, my home, and everyone back there always tells me that I'm being, since they don't have to worry about progressivism because it's not out there and it's not in their world, blah blah blah. But it seems to be creeping in now because there's no haters out in Norfolk County. It's a bunch of old people that play in like Irish bands and stuff like that. So like having and everyone's Christian out in Norfolk anyway. So they're kind of just by definition like liberal Christian, right? Like they're mostly probably just not about abortion. So it seems like some group of progressives have just made up a reason to go rip someone out of a music festival again, and the best they could come up with, they're being anti-abortion homophobes, which I can, I don't know the context of which band they're talking about right now, but I can almost guarantee there's no homophobic anti-abortion bands rock in Simcoe, Ontario. Trust me on that one, guys. What else did I want to talk about? I'm just seeing what we put on the Freebird Media page today as a finishing note. Let's see, what do we talk about? Oh yeah, two things I'll share with you guys on the way out. This is from CTV. This is just funny little video. Somebody out in Halifax parked in front of a fire hydrant, and there was a fire, and the fire department needed that hydrant, so that they just threw the hose right through the middle of this van and rocked it. It's pretty hilarious. So let me throw that out there. Damn it! I hate when these hyperlinks are too long that I can't share it in the chat. Hold on, let me. Maybe that'll work. Hold on a sec. Let's see. Shoot, I don't know how to get this. I don't know how to get a smaller hyperlink for this. If you're on Facebook, check out the Facebook page. You'll see this hilarious video. And the one other thing I'll leave you with is, if you missed this stream earlier, this article, man, this has got to be one of the craziest things I have come across. This professor that I streamed about this morning from Harvard. If you didn't catch the earlier stream this morning, you got to read this article. It's insane with how bad this guy got suckered by this lesbian and her trans partner. And this guy teaches at Harvard, and he teaches a class on good decision making and how people delude themselves. It's like everything I've ever, it's like 6 themes of this channel in one story. So let me just find the link to this here. Here we go. Check out this article. It'll blow your minds. Awesome. Alright guys, it's basically been an hour. I covered what I wanted to cover for Graham Hancock stuff. If you find that interesting or any other topics you want me to stream about tomorrow, feel free to leave comments. Otherwise, I appreciate Sheldon's comments and your super chat, Slavey, all the normal guys, Mordecai, Howard G, Gun Cotton. Appreciate all you guys, and I'll do another stream tomorrow. So take care, guys.